I'm tired of Christmas. A survival guide for when joy feels like a job. Introduction. Remember that scene in Home Alone when Catherine O'Hara is rushing through the airport, frantic and desperate to get back to her son? The chaos, the pressure, everything falling apart, and yet the whole world watches and thinks, "Oh, how touching. That's real Christmas spirit." But let's be honest. For many of us, the Christmas season isn't about magic anymore. It's become something else entirely. A season of exhaustion, overwhelm, and the quiet, guilty wish to disappear somewhere far away, where there are no trees, no turkey dinners, and no mandatory family gatherings. Picture this. You're standing in front of a store window where twinkling lights glow against the glass. Mariah Carey's voice floats through the air, singing, "All I want for Christmas is you," and everyone around you seems to be smiling. But you feel heavy, like someone just handed you another to-do list you never asked for, another set of expectations you don't know how to meet, another performance you're not sure you can pull off. And here's the thing. You're not alone. Millions of people walk around during the holidays wearing a mask of joy while quietly drowning inside. They smile at the dinner table, wrap the gifts, say all the right things, and then lock themselves in the bathroom and cry. Or they lie awake at 3 a.m. with their hearts racing, wondering how they're going to survive another perfect Christmas, while feeling exhausted, burned out, guilty, and utterly confused about why everyone else seems so happy when all they want to do is run. If that's you, I need you to hear this. The problem isn't you. You're human. And somewhere along the way, Christmas stopped being a celebration and became an obligation, a checklist, a performance, a competition to see who can be the most festive, the most generous, the most joyful, even when there's nothing left inside. You've tried to get into the spirit. You've put up decorations, baked cookies, bought presents, attended parties, and forced yourself to smile, telling yourself that maybe this year will be different. Maybe this year you'll finally feel that magic everyone talks about. But it doesn't come, and then you feel even worse, because clearly, everyone else has figured out how to love Christmas while you're still struggling to get through it. But here's what nobody tells you. The reason you can't force yourself to feel the magic is because the version we've been sold isn't real. The Christmas we see in movies, in commercials, on Instagram, that's pure fantasy. Think about Love Actually, or The Holiday, or every Hallmark film ever made. Beautiful and glossy and perfect, yet completely unrealistic. Real Christmas for most people comes with stress, financial pressure, and emotional complications that don't fit neatly into a 2-hour rom-com. Pretending otherwise doesn't make it better. It just makes you feel more alone. So what if I told you there's another way? What if you didn't have to keep pretending, didn't have to show up for traditions that drain you, or smile through dinners that make you miserable, or spend money you don't have just to prove you care? What if you could design your own Christmas, one that feels honest, peaceful, and genuinely joyful? Not because it looks perfect, but because it's real? That's what this book is about. Not hating Christmas or running away forever, but reclaiming it. Giving yourself permission to let go of the expectations, the guilt, the pressure, and the performance. Figuring out what Christmas means to you, not to your family, not to society, not to Hallmark, but to you. And then creating a holiday season that actually honors that. Over the next 10 chapters, we're going to walk through everything. Why the holidays feel so heavy and where all these expectations came from. How to set boundaries without blowing up your relationships. How to deal with toxic family dynamics and financial pressure and social media comparisons and the crushing weight of guilt. And most importantly, how to find your own meaning in the season. Whether that involves creating new traditions, simplifying old ones, or stepping away entirely. You don't owe anyone a picture-perfect Christmas. You don't owe anyone your energy, your time, or your mental health just because the calendar says December. You're allowed to choose yourself, to say no, to create a holiday that actually feels good instead of something you have to survive. And if that sounds selfish, let me tell you something. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. And the truth is that nobody benefits from your burnout. When you show up exhausted, resentful, and empty, everyone around you feels it. But when you show up honest, grounded, and genuinely present, even if that means doing things differently, that's when real connection happens. That's when the magic actually becomes real. So if you're tired of pretending, if you're done forcing yourself to feel something you don't, if you're ready to stop running on empty and start building a holiday season that actually works for you, keep listening. Because this isn't just about surviving Christmas. It's about reclaiming your life. And it starts right now. Chapter soon. When the holiday became a checklist. Do you remember when Christmas felt like magic? Real magic. The kind that made your heart race when you woke up on Christmas morning or saw the first snowfall of the season. Maybe you were a kid then, running down the stairs in your pajamas. Or maybe you were young and in love, watching the city lights reflected in your partner's eyes while walking through the cold December night. Somewhere back there, Christmas wasn't something you had to survive. It was something you actually wanted. Now it's different. You see the first Christmas display in a store while it's still technically autumn, and instead of excitement, you feel dread. You know what's coming. The endless list of tasks, the pressure to make everything perfect, the exhausting dance of managing everyone else's expectations while slowly losing yourself somewhere between the grocery store and the gift wrap aisle. Sarah knows this feeling intimately. Every December, something inside her breaks. She's a mother of 3, married for 16 years, works full-time managing projects and deadlines. Her family expects the house to look like something out of a magazine, preferably one with words like effortless and cozy in every caption, even though nothing about December feels effortless. Then there are the gifts, not just for her kids, although that alone could bankrupt a small nation, but for teachers, coaches, neighbors, co-workers, extended family members whose names she sometimes forgets until the panic of addressing Christmas cards hits. Then the meals, the baking that nobody really needs, but everyone expects. The parties where you have to pretend you're having the time of your life, while secretly calculating how long you have to stay before it's polite to leave. Last Christmas Eve, after everyone had gone to bed, Sarah sat alone in her kitchen, surrounded by wrapping paper and half-eaten cookies that were supposed to be for Santa. She started crying, and once she started, she couldn't stop. Nothing terrible had happened. She just realized she hadn't enjoyed a single moment of the entire season. She'd been so busy performing Christmas, making it look perfect for everyone else, that she'd completely missed actually experiencing it. Somewhere between her 10th trip to Target and her 3rd batch of sugar cookies, Christmas had stopped being a holiday and started being an unpaid second job. The guilt hit her immediately, because isn't Christmas supposed to be the happiest time of the year? Shouldn't she be grateful for her family, her home, her ability to provide these things? What kind of person feels miserable during Christmas? Probably the same kind who secretly wants to launch the elf on the shelf into orbit after forgetting to move it for the 3rd night in a row. Christmas has become a cultural obligation wrapped in nostalgia, guilt, and an alarming amount of glitter that somehow ends up everywhere, including places glitter should never be. We're told it's the most wonderful time of the year, And for millions of people, it's actually the most exhausting, financially draining, emotionally complicated season they face. We're not allowed to say that out loud because it sounds ungrateful, like we're actively trying to ruin everyone's holiday spirit. Think about what Christmas actually looks like. Shopping for gifts you can't afford for people who don't need anything, including your cousin who already owns everything and whose wish list contains items you can't even pronounce. Attending parties where you make small talk with people you barely know while wishing you were home in your actual comfortable pajamas, the ones with holes in them, watching something that doesn't involve animated reindeer. Cooking elaborate meals that no one fully appreciates because they're too full or distracted by their phones or still traumatized by whatever your aunt brought to dinner 3 years ago. Traveling during the worst weather to visit family members who still treat you like you're 12 years old and ask invasive questions about your life choices. The moment you admit you're tired, someone inevitably says, "But it's Christmas. You have to enjoy it." As if joy is something you can order with 2-day shipping. As if forcing yourself to smile through exhaustion somehow makes you happy, instead of just making your face hurt. So when did this shift happen? When did Christmas turn from a celebration into a to-do list that would make even Santa consider early retirement? Part of it comes from the version of Christmas we've been sold. Every movie, every commercial, every social media post shows families laughing together around perfectly decorated homes with tables overflowing with food that never burns, everyone dressed beautifully in coordinating outfits, looking genuinely happy and definitely not like anyone wants to fake a stomach flu and hide in the bathroom. Think about Love Actually or any Hallmark movie you've ever seen. Beautiful, glossy, perfect, and about as realistic as finding a parking spot at the mall in December. Part of it comes from personal history. Maybe your family has traditions that feel more like obligations now, rituals you're expected to uphold, even though they stopped bringing you joy years ago. Maybe you're carrying the weight of making Christmas magical for everyone else, while no one thinks to ask, what would make it magical for you? Maybe you've spent so many years trying to meet everyone else's expectations that you've forgotten what you actually want, aside from a nap and maybe some silence. And part of it is simply burnout. December has become a marathon of consumption, production, and performance. And by the time Christmas Day actually arrives, most people are too exhausted to enjoy it. They just want to survive it and collapse on December 26th. Try this right now. Take out a piece of paper or open a note on your phone. Write down every single thing you're expected to do this holiday season. Everything you feel obligated to do. The parties you have to attend, the gifts you have to buy, the meals you have to cook, the people you have to see, the decorations you have to put up, the cards you have to send, the traditions you have to maintain even though you're running on fumes. All of it. Now look at that list. Really look at it. How much of it actually brings you joy? How much are you doing because you genuinely want to versus doing because you feel like you have to? How much of your energy, your time, your money, and your mental health is being consumed by obligations that don't make you happy? This is the honest list. The one you don't show anyone else because it feels too vulnerable, too ungrateful, too real. This is where change begins. With honesty. With admitting that something isn't working anymore, that the way you've been doing Christmas doesn't feel good, and that you deserve better than spending an entire month exhausted, overwhelmed, and disconnected from yourself. You are allowed to feel this way. You're allowed to be tired of the pressure and the performance and the endless obligations. You're allowed to want something different, and you're absolutely allowed to create something different. Sarah hit her breaking point that Christmas Eve in her kitchen. The next morning, when her family woke up, she sat them down and said something she'd never said before. I can't do this anymore. I love you all, and I want us to enjoy Christmas together. Really enjoy it, which means some things have to change. Her husband looked shocked. Her kids looked confused. Her mother-in-law, who was visiting, looked like Sarah had just announced she was canceling Christmas entirely and joining a cult. Sarah told them she wasn't going to spend weeks baking cookies they barely ate. She wasn't going to stress about decorations that made the house look perfect for photos while making her miserable. She wasn't going to buy expensive gifts they didn't need just to check boxes on a list. She wanted Christmas to feel good, which meant doing significantly less. The reaction was mixed. Her husband eventually came around, especially after she pointed out he'd also benefit from a less stressful December. Her kids adapted faster than she expected once they realized less pressure on mom meant more actual fun. Her mother-in-law took longer, much longer, to accept it, and may still be processing it. Something shifted that year, though. Christmas stopped being a performance and started becoming something real again. It wasn't perfect, far from it. And it definitely didn't look like anything you'd see on Instagram. That was exactly the point. The heaviness you feel during the holidays isn't a personal failing. It's a completely normal response to an unreasonable set of expectations that have nothing to do with joy and everything to do with obligation. The moment you recognize that, the moment you give yourself permission to stop performing and start choosing, everything changes. And that's exactly where we're headed next. Chapter 2. You're not selfish, you're exhausted. There's a difference between wanting to celebrate Christmas and feeling obligated to perform it. Most people don't even realize they've crossed that line until they're standing in the kitchen at midnight on Christmas Eve, assembling a gingerbread house that nobody asked for while questioning every life choice that led to this moment. The word selfish gets thrown around a lot during the holidays, usually by people who benefit from you not being selfish. You don't want to host the family dinner this year? Selfish. You'd rather skip the office party and go home to decompress? Selfish. You want to spend Christmas Day in your pajamas instead of driving 3 hours in a snowstorm? Definitely selfish. Possibly also a terrible person who hates joy. What they're really saying is, your boundaries are inconvenient for me, so I'm going to make you feel guilty about having them. David found this out the hard way. Every year his family held Christmas dinner at his parents' house. Everyone was expected to attend, no exceptions, no matter what else was happening in their lives. For 20 years, David showed up. He showed up when he was sick with the flu, when he had work deadlines, when he was going through a divorce and could barely get out of bed. He showed up because that's what you do. That's what good family members do. Last year, he didn't go. For the first time in 2 decades, he stayed home. Not because he was sick or had an emergency, just because he was exhausted. Completely, utterly exhausted from years of showing up for everyone else, while slowly erasing himself in the process. He sent a text to his family explaining he needed a quiet Christmas this year, that he loved them and would see them soon, just not on Christmas Day. His phone exploded. Calls, texts, voicemails, all variations of the same message. How could you do this to us? Don't you care about family? This is so selfish. His mother cried. His sister accused him of ruining Christmas. His brother stopped speaking to him for 3 weeks. David spent Christmas Day alone in his apartment, and something unexpected happened. He felt peace, real, genuine peace. He cooked a simple meal, watched movies he actually wanted to watch, went for a walk in the quiet snow-covered streets, and went to bed early because he could. No forced conversations, no pretending to enjoy himself while feeling miserable inside. no emotional hangover from managing everyone else's feelings while ignoring his own. The guilt came later, of course. It always does. But beneath the guilt was something else, something he hadn't felt in years. Relief. Christmas has become an emotional hostage situation where your joy is held ransom by other people's expectations. You're told that if you truly loved your family, you'd be happy to do all the things that make you miserable. If you really cared about Christmas, you'd smile through the stress, the financial pressure, the emotional exhaustion, and never complain. And if you don't, if you dare to say, "I can't do this anymore," you're selfish. That word, selfish, is designed to keep you in line. It's designed to make you feel guilty for having needs, for setting boundaries, for choosing your own well-being over someone else's convenience. And it works incredibly well, because most of us would rather suffer in silence than be called selfish. Think about it. When's the last time someone asked, what would make Christmas meaningful for you? When's the last time someone checked if you were actually enjoying yourself or just going through the motions? When's the last time someone said, "You seem tired. How can we make this easier for you?" Versus, "Why aren't you more excited about Christmas?" The truth nobody wants to say out loud is that many Christmas traditions aren't maintained because they bring joy. They're maintained because stopping them would require having uncomfortable conversations, setting boundaries, and dealing with other people's disappointment. So we keep doing things we don't enjoy, spending money we don't have, attending events we dread, and calling it tradition instead of what it actually is: obligation wrapped in guilt. Choosing yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you honest. And honestly, if taking care of your mental health and protecting your peace makes you selfish, maybe we need to redefine what that word means. Jessica learned this when she decided to stop sending Christmas cards. For 15 years, she'd spent December addressing over 100 cards to people she barely kept in touch with. People who probably threw the cards away within a week, if they even opened them. It took hours, cost money, and added another task to her already overwhelming list. One year, she just didn't do it. The reactions were telling. Most people didn't notice. A few mentioned it casually. But two people she barely spoke to outside of this annual card exchange, called her out. One asked if everything was okay, implying something must be wrong if Jessica wasn't sending cards. The other made a pointed comment about people who can't be bothered with tradition anymore. Jessica realized something important. The people who got upset about her boundaries weren't upset because they'd miss her cards. They were upset because her choice to stop made them question whether they wanted to keep doing it too. Her freedom threatened their performance. That's what often happens when you step out of the Christmas obligation cycle. People don't get mad because they'll miss you at the party or genuinely care about receiving your handmade cookies. They get mad because your choice to prioritize your own well-being forces them to look at their own choices, and that makes them uncomfortable. Your exhaustion is valid. Your desire to do less is valid. Your need for rest, for quiet, for a Christmas that doesn't leave you depleted and resentful is completely valid. You're not selfish for wanting those things. You're human. The question isn't whether you're selfish for wanting to change how you do Christmas. The question is, how much longer are you willing to sacrifice your own well-being to avoid other people's disappointment? Because eventually, you'll run out of energy. Eventually, the smile will become impossible to fake. Eventually, you'll find yourself crying in your kitchen on Christmas Eve, wondering how something that's supposed to be joyful became something you have to survive. And when that happens, you'll realize that taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's the only thing that makes sense. Chapter 3. Whose Christmas is this anyway? There's a moment somewhere around mid-December when you stop and ask yourself, why am I doing this? Maybe it's a specific obligation that exhausts you, or perhaps an entire tradition you've been maintaining for years while quietly wondering if anyone would actually notice if you stopped. The answer usually comes quickly, because we've always done it this way. That phrase is responsible for more holiday misery than burnt turkey and awkward family photos combined. It's the reason people spend their entire December exhausted, broke, and emotionally drained while maintaining traditions they don't enjoy for the benefit of people who might not even want them. Rachel finally asked her family something she'd never thought to question. Why do we always have Christmas dinner at noon? For 35 years, her extended family had gathered at exactly 12 o'clock. It meant waking up early, rushing through opening presents, cooking in a frenzy, and eating a massive meal when nobody was particularly hungry yet. Every year felt stressful, but that was just how it was done. When she asked her mother why, the answer was simple. Because that's when your grandmother always did it. Rachel pressed further. But why did Grandma do it at noon? Her mother paused. I think because she had to get back to work at the hospital by evening. Rachel's grandmother had been a nurse who worked night shifts. She'd been dead for 15 years, and the family was still organizing their entire Christmas around her work schedule from the 1970s. Suggesting they move dinner to evening triggered immediate resistance. Not because anyone actually preferred noon, but because changing it felt wrong. It felt like betraying tradition, dishonoring her grandmother's memory, admitting that maybe the way they'd always done things simply didn't work anymore. They moved it anyway. Everything was better. Everyone enjoyed the meal more. Nobody missed the noon timing except in the abstract sense of, well, it feels different. Different isn't bad. Sometimes different is exactly what people need. Most Christmas traditions started because they made sense at some point. Your family always went to midnight mass because your great-grandparents loved it. You always made 7 types of cookies because your mother enjoyed baking. You always spent Christmas at your aunt's house because she had the biggest living room. These were logical choices that worked for those people in their time. The problem is that we keep doing these things long after they stop making sense. Long after the original reasons disappear. Long after everyone involved is just going through motions because nobody wants to be the person who breaks tradition. Think about your own traditions. How many do you actually enjoy versus how many do you do because you're supposed to? How many bring genuine joy versus how many just bring obligation and stress? If you're honest with yourself, how many would you keep if you had complete freedom to choose? 20 years into his marriage, Marcus had never mentioned that he hated the decorating season. His wife loved transforming their house into something that could compete with department store displays. It took weeks to set up, weeks to take down. Elaborate, expensive, picture perfect. Friends complimented it constantly. Neighbors stopped by to photograph it. Instagram followers practically doubled in December. Marcus hated every minute. Not Christmas. Not his wife. Not the idea of making their home festive. He just didn't care about creating a winter wonderland. If it were up to him, a simple tree and maybe some lights on the house would be enough. More than enough. He'd be genuinely happy. But it wasn't up to him. And he'd never said anything because his wife clearly loved it, and he loved her, so that's what you do, right? One evening during the 3rd week of hanging ornaments and untangling light strings, Marcus sat down on their bedroom floor and said, I can't do this anymore. His wife thought he meant he couldn't help with decorating. He meant he couldn't pretend anymore that this version of Christmas felt good to him. They talked. Really talked. Not surface-level conversations where you avoid anything uncomfortable. His wife said something that surprised him. "I thought you liked it." When he asked why, she said, "Because you never said you didn't." There it is, the core reason we end up living someone else's Christmas. We assume everyone around us is happy, so we stay silent. We don't speak up because we think our discomfort is selfish, or because we don't want to cause problems, or because we genuinely didn't realize it was okay to have a different preference. And everyone else is doing the exact same thing, suffering in silence, all while maintaining traditions that make nobody actually happy. Chapter 4. Create your own permission slip. The most powerful sentence you can say during the holidays might sound simple, almost ridiculous. This year, I'm doing it differently. It's not actually simple, because saying those words means you're willing to disappoint people. It means you're willing to be called selfish, ungrateful, difficult, or any number of other things that will land you firmly in the category of people who ruin Christmas. It means you're willing to be uncomfortable and sit with other people's discomfort too. Most people aren't ready for that. They'd rather stay exhausted, resentful, and broken than risk looking bad. But what if you stopped waiting for permission? What if you didn't ask your family or your friends or society whether it was okay to protect your own peace? Elena spent her entire marriage making Christmas the way her husband wanted it. Not because he demanded it, exactly, but because he had a very specific vision of what Christmas should look like. Every decoration needed to match. Every meal needed to follow a particular structure. Everything had to happen at the right time, in the right order, or Christmas would somehow be ruined. Elena had accepted this as the price of being married, as if she'd signed an invisible contract that said her preferences didn't really matter. 43 years into her marriage, exhausted and angry in a way that surprised even her, Elena did something radical. 3 weeks before Christmas, she told her husband, "I'm not doing all of this year. I love you, but I'm tired, and I need things to be different." She expected a fight. She expected him to be upset, to list all the reasons why they had to do things the way they'd always done them, to remind her of her obligations. Instead, he cried. Not sad tears, but tears of relief. He said, "I've been exhausted too. I've just been waiting for you to say something." Turns out they'd both been performing Christmas for each other, both suffering in silence, both terrified of disappointing the other person. They'd been trapped in a cycle of mutual exhaustion that neither of them actually wanted to maintain. The shift happened slowly. That first year was awkward. They didn't decorate as extensively. The meal was simpler. Some traditions disappeared entirely. It felt wrong at first, like they were abandoning something sacred. But within a few days, they both felt something they hadn't felt in years. Genuine peace during the holiday season. What Elena did took courage, but it didn't require permission. Permission is something people wait for from external sources, from authority figures, from people whose opinions they've decided matter more than their own well-being. Permission is a trap because there's always someone who can deny it to you. But you don't need anyone's permission to take care of yourself. Think about what you'd do differently if you didn't have to worry about disappointing anyone. Would you skip the big family dinner and stay home? Would you not decorate at all? Would you go somewhere completely different? Would you do absolutely nothing and just rest? Would you spend it alone or with a completely different group of people? Write that down. Not as a fantasy, not as something to do someday when things calm down, but as a real possibility for this year. And then ask yourself, what's actually stopping you? Be specific. Is it fear of judgment? Financial pressure? Obligation to specific people? Worry about how your absence will affect others. Write that down too. Because here's what most people discover when they do this exercise. The reasons they're not doing what they want usually have very little to do with actual logistics and everything to do with fear. Fear of being judged. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of being seen as ungrateful or selfish. Fear that if they put themselves first, somehow everything will fall apart. The irony is that everything usually falls apart anyway, just more slowly and painfully. People adjust. Life continues. The world doesn't actually need your Christmas performance to keep spinning. James quit attending his wife's family's Christmas gathering 3 years ago. For 22 years, he'd gone dutifully to an event he dreaded. The house was uncomfortable. The family was chaotic. The meals were overcooked. He felt nothing but dread leading up to it, and nothing but relief when it was over. One year, he finally said, "I'm not going. I'm going to stay home, read, sleep, rest. And I'd love it if you came back by evening. But I understand if you need to stay longer." His wife's immediate reaction was panic. "You can't do that. What will my mother think? What will the family say?" James said, "Probably things that upset you. And then eventually everyone will move on." And he was right. There was initial backlash. His wife's mother made pointed comments about how things have changed and people who care about family. But after a few years of this, they adjusted. And interestingly, his wife's stress level around the holidays dropped significantly. She wasn't spending all her energy managing his misery on top of managing everyone else's expectations. When you stop performing, when you stop showing up for traditions that don't actually serve anyone, something interesting happens. People either adapt or they reveal that they were more attached to your performance than to you. Either way, you get clarity. You don't need a grand reason to do Christmas differently. You don't need to have a better plan or more righteous motivation. The simple fact that you'd prefer to do something else is reason enough. Your preference, by itself, is valid. Chapter 5. The guilt you're carrying isn't yours. Guilt is a fascinating thing. It shows up uninvited, settles into your chest, and whispers that you're wrong for wanting what you want. It tells you that your needs are selfish, your boundaries are unkind, your desires are unreasonable. And the thing about guilt is that it's incredibly persuasive, especially if you've spent years being told that other people's comfort matters more than yours. Most of the guilt you carry around the holidays doesn't even belong to you. Think about where it came from. Maybe your mother made certain comments about Christmas being a time for family, in a way that somehow made you responsible for managing everyone's emotions. Maybe your father had a particular way of celebrating that you learned early on was non-negotiable. Maybe extended family members weaponized guilt so effectively that you internalized it as a core part of your identity. Or maybe you just absorbed the general cultural message that if you're not miserable during the holidays trying to make everyone else happy, you're doing it wrong. Guilt is something older people pass down like an heirloom. Mothers give it to daughters. Grandmothers give it to entire families. People who've spent their whole lives performing Christmas for others transfer that performance expectation to the next generation. And they do it unconsciously, thinking they're teaching the right way to do things. Patricia grew up watching her mother sacrifice everything for Christmas. Early mornings, late nights, money they didn't have, energy that clearly wasn't there. Her mother acted like this was a privilege, like serving others during the holidays was somehow the highest calling a woman could have. Patricia absorbed the message that this was what love looked like. Exhaustion, self-erasure, performance. At 45, with her own teenage kids, Patricia was repeating the exact same pattern. She was tired in a bone-deep way that sleep couldn't fix. She was resentful toward her family in a way that sometimes surprised her with its intensity. And she was passing all of this down to her daughter, who'd already started asking if she had to participate in all the family traditions or if she could do something different. Patricia's first instinct was to make her daughter feel guilty, to explain how much work Christmas takes, how ungrateful it would be to opt out, how family traditions are important. But something made her pause. She looked at her daughter's tired face and thought, I don't want this for her. I don't want to give her what was given to me. So instead of guilt-tripping her daughter, Patricia asked her what she actually wanted to do for Christmas. Her daughter said she wanted a quiet day, maybe some time with close friends, instead of the massive family gathering. Patricia's immediate instinct was to panic. What would the family think? What would people say? But then she realized, those are the same anxious thoughts her mother had probably had, which is why she'd never asked Patricia what she wanted either. The guilt had simply been transferred, generation to generation, like a curse nobody wanted to break. They broke it that year. Her daughter spent part of Christmas Eve with the family and then went to a friend's house for Christmas Day. The family drama that Patricia had imagined wouldn't happen. And instead, people just accepted it. It wasn't what they'd planned. But the world didn't end. What Patricia didn't expect was how guilty she'd feel about that decision anyway. Even after everyone accepted it, even after nothing bad happened, even after her daughter was happier, Patricia still felt this underlying guilt. Because guilt isn't always logical. Sometimes it sticks around long after the reason for it has disappeared. Guilt is how systems maintain themselves. It's how people who are miserable keep everyone else miserable too. It's how traditions that nobody actually wants to maintain keep getting maintained. Guilt is the glue that holds together dysfunctional patterns, and it's nearly impossible to break free without feeling like you're doing something wrong. But here's what's actually true. The guilt you feel for wanting to do Christmas differently is not evidence that you're being selfish. It's evidence that you've absorbed other people's expectations so thoroughly that your own needs now feel foreign, even dangerous. It's evidence that the system is working the way it's designed to work, which is to keep you performing, keep you exhausted, keep you prioritizing everyone else's comfort over your own survival. The guilt will probably follow you for a while, even after you make different choices. That's okay. You can feel guilty and still make the choice. You can feel guilty and still protect your peace. You can feel guilty and recognize that the guilt is old programming, not truth. One way to start releasing guilt is to trace it back. When you feel guilty about not wanting to do something, ask yourself, whose voice is this? Is this my own belief? Or is this something someone else installed in me? Is this guilt serving me, or is it serving someone else's interests? Most of the time, the answer is the latter. Chapter 6. Money, Gifts, and the Myth of Meaning. Christmas has become absurdly expensive, and nobody talks about it the way they should. People celebrate Christmas while carrying credit card debt into January, February, sometimes all the way into summer. They spend money they don't have on gifts for people they barely see, on decorations they'll store for 11 months, on elaborate meals that will be consumed and forgotten within hours. They do all of this while stressed about finances, while worried about making rent, while genuinely uncertain if they can afford both Christmas and their own well-being. And if they mention this, if they say, "I can't afford Christmas this year," people look at them with pity or judgment, depending on their mood. The implicit message is clear. Good people find a way. Good people sacrifice. Good people don't prioritize their own financial stability over family expectations. The financial pressure of Christmas isn't accidental. It's built into the entire structure. Retailers start pushing the shopping narrative in October, making sure everyone feels the urgency to buy early. Social media shows curated versions of perfect Christmases that happen to require significant spending. Family members casually mention what they want, sending the message that they're expecting gifts. The entire system is designed to make you feel like you're not doing Christmas right unless you're spending money. Thomas had always felt uncomfortable with this. Every year, his family did a secret Santa exchange with a $100 limit. $100 on a single gift for someone, usually someone he wasn't particularly close to. He'd spend weeks trying to figure out what to buy, then spend money he didn't really have, then feel guilty about the amount even as he was spending it. One year, Thomas just decided not to participate. He sent an email to the family group chat. "I'm not doing Secret Santa this year. I'd be happy to celebrate Christmas with you, but I'm not comfortable with the spending expectation." The responses came quickly. His sister called him selfish. His cousin messaged asking if everything was okay, implying something must be wrong if he didn't want to spend money. His aunt made a comment at family dinner about people who forget their responsibilities. What surprised Thomas was the relief he felt. Yes, there was backlash. Yes, people were upset. But Thomas wasn't stressed for the first time in December in 20 years. He wasn't lying awake at night worrying about credit card debt. He wasn't buying things he didn't believe in to meet arbitrary spending expectations. By the second year, his sister stopped complaining. By the third year, his cousin asked if he could also skip the Secret Santa because it was stressing him out too. Nobody said it directly, but Thomas's decision to opt out had given other people permission to examine their own relationship with holiday spending. Some people still participated, but fewer felt obligated to. The gift-giving industrial complex thrives on the idea that gifts equal love, that more expensive gifts equal more love, that the value of a present reflects the value of the relationship. All of these things are designed to keep people spending, keep people anxious about whether they're spending enough, keep people in a state of financial stress that benefits retailers far more than it benefits anyone actually celebrating the holiday. But gifts don't require money. Meaning doesn't require a price tag. Some of the most meaningful gifts are free. Time with someone you love, your full attention, your presence, your willingness to listen. A handwritten letter can mean more than anything purchased at a store. A tradition you create together can matter more than expensive decorations. Laughter shared over a simple meal can be more valuable than an elaborate feast. The problem is that culture has convinced us that these things aren't real gifts. Real gifts come from stores. Real gifts cost money. Real gifts can be displayed and compared to other people's gifts. A homemade dinner, your company, your attention, your care, somehow doesn't count. This is financial pressure wrapped in the language of love. It's one of the most insidious parts of holiday culture because it connects your financial choices to your worth as a family member, as a friend, as a human being. What if you decided this year that you were opting out of the arms race? What if you decided that your gifts would be your time, your presence, your conversation? What if you made something instead of buying something, or gave something you already owned that held meaning, or simply showed up with your full attention instead of worrying about material proof of your affection? Some people will judge you for this. Some people might even be hurt initially, expecting something different. But over time, they might remember what Christmas actually felt like, when it wasn't about consumption. They might realize that they'd rather have you stressed and present than absent because you're working overtime to afford expensive gifts nobody really needs. The financial burden of Christmas is real. and it's not something you should just accept as the cost of celebrating. It's a choice. Every year, you get to choose whether you want to participate in the spending expectations or whether you want to do something different. And every time you choose differently, you're giving yourself and everyone around you permission to question whether this is really how it has to be. Chapter 7. Toxic Family Dynamics. Don't get better at Christmas. Christmas doesn't magically transform toxic family relationships. If anything, it makes them worse because now there's added pressure, added expectations, added stress, and everyone's supposed to pretend they're having a wonderful time together anyway. Somehow, people believe that the holidays have healing powers. That if you just show up, just try hard enough, just swallow your anger and your hurt, maybe this year will be different. Maybe this year your parent will finally acknowledge what they did. Maybe this year your sibling will treat you with respect. Maybe this year the family will feel like a family instead of like a minefield where you're constantly wondering which comment will set things off. It almost never works that way. Anna grew up in a house where nothing she did was ever good enough. Her mother had a critical eye for everything. Her clothes didn't fit right. Her grades could have been higher. Her career choice was disappointing. Her life trajectory was a constant source of gentle, persistent criticism wrapped in the language of concern. By the time Anna was an adult, she'd internalized her mother's voice so thoroughly that she was doing the criticizing for her. Christmas made it worse. Family gathered, expectations rose, and Anna found herself reverting to a version of herself from 20 years ago. Defensive, anxious, desperate to do something right for once. Her mother would mention something small, something that under normal circumstances wouldn't bother Anna at all, and she'd feel that familiar knot in her chest. The validation she'd built up during the rest of the year would crumble. For 30 years, Anna went to Christmas dinner. For 30 years, she left feeling worse than when she arrived. She'd promise herself that next year would be different, that she'd set boundaries, that she'd speak up, that she wouldn't let her mother's words land the way they always did. Then one year, Anna didn't go. She stayed home. Her mother called, hurt and angry. Her siblings sent messages about how selfish it was, how they'd all been looking forward to seeing her. Anna felt guilty, as expected. But she also felt something else. Relief. Peace. A version of Christmas that didn't require her to absorb her mother's criticism or manage her mother's feelings. The next year, her mother made comments about how Anna's absence had ruined Christmas. The guilt came back, and Anna almost caved. But she'd experienced what a different Christmas felt like, and she couldn't pretend anymore that her presence was required to validate her mother's version of a perfect holiday. Toxic family dynamics don't require your participation to continue existing. Your absence might even highlight them more clearly because people who benefit from your people-pleasing will have to face the discomfort of not getting what they want from you. Some families are genuinely harmful. Some parents are emotionally abusive or manipulative or controlling. Some siblings use family gatherings as an opportunity to criticize or belittle. Some extended family members make comments that are racist, homophobic, misogynist, or otherwise deeply offensive, and then act shocked when anyone objects. Christmas doesn't heal these dynamics. Christmas just gives them a bigger stage. If your family is toxic, if going to family gatherings leaves you feeling worse than you felt before, if you come home from Christmas and need weeks to recover emotionally, that's a sign that your presence there is costing you something significant. And no amount of guilt should make you pay that price. One option is to stop going, to create distance, to protect yourself, to decide that you don't have to participate in a dynamic that harms you. This will make people upset. People will accuse you of being selfish, of holding grudges, of dividing the family. They might be right that you're dividing the family, but division isn't always bad. Sometimes division is necessary. Another option is to go but to set very specific boundaries. To decide in advance what behavior you will tolerate and what you won't. To know that you might leave early if things escalate. To have a script ready for comments that are offensive or inappropriate. To not pretend to have emotions you don't have. A third option is to go but to show up differently. To not seek validation from people incapable of giving it. To let go of the fantasy that this gathering will finally be the one where everyone gets along. To interact with the people you actually enjoy and limit interaction with people who harm you. To protect your energy by not trying to manage everyone's feelings or navigate the politics of the family dynamic. You get to choose. That might be the most important thing to know about family relationships, toxic or otherwise. You get to choose whether you go, how you participate, how long you stay, and whether you engage with people who consistently hurt you. Your only obligation is to yourself. Chapter 8. The loneliness in the crowded room. The worst kind of Christmas loneliness isn't being alone. It's being surrounded by people and feeling completely isolated. It's being at a family dinner where everyone else seems connected in ways you're not. Where conversations flow around you, but not with you. Where you feel like you're watching someone else's Christmas through a window instead of actually being part of it. It's being at a party with 50 people and still feeling like nobody really sees you. It's hearing people talk about how wonderful Christmas is with family while you're thinking about how disconnected you feel from yours. This kind of loneliness is disorienting because the surface of things looks fine. People are around. Technically, you're not alone, but the connection isn't there, and that absence feels louder than actual silence ever could. Michael spent every Christmas with his ex-wife's family, even after the divorce. He'd become close to them over the years, and when the marriage ended, so did that relationship. He still got invited, but it was different. He was an outsider in a way he hadn't been before. People were kind enough, but there was a distance that hadn't existed when he was married to one of them. He was no longer family in the way he'd been. He was the ex-husband, a permanent reminder that things had changed. For 2 years, Michael went anyway. He showed up, he participated, he tried to pretend that the discomfort wasn't there. Both years left him feeling more alone than if he'd stayed home by himself. The third year, he skipped it. He spent Christmas alone in his apartment with movies and takeout. It was quiet and uneventful and peaceful. More importantly, it didn't feel lonely. Being alone felt better than being surrounded by people and feeling invisible. Then he tried something different. He reached out to other people he knew who weren't with family for the holidays. Some were divorced like him. Some had family they didn't talk to. Some just preferred not to be with their families. A handful said yes to his invitation to have a low-key Christmas together. No traditions, no expectations, just people who'd rather be with each other than somewhere else. That was the first Christmas in years that Michael actually felt connected to people on Christmas Day. The loneliness that comes from being in the wrong place with the wrong people is one of the most valid reasons to make changes to how you spend the holidays. You don't owe your presence to situations that make you feel more isolated instead of less. Maybe your family is just different from you in ways that create distance. Maybe they're not toxic exactly, but you don't really fit. Maybe you have different values, different senses of humor, different ways of moving through the world. Maybe you love them, but you don't actually like spending extended time with them. Or maybe you don't have family to go to. Maybe your family has passed away, or you're not in contact with them. Maybe you were never close. Maybe you're alone by circumstance or choice. And the cultural assumption that Christmas is a family holiday just makes you feel worse. You don't have to spend Christmas with people who make you feel lonely. You can spend it with chosen family, with friends, with people you actually connect with. You can spend it alone and make it meaningful. You can spend it volunteering or working or doing something that feels purposeful to you. The point is that proximity to other people isn't the same as connection. You can be in a room full of people and still feel profoundly alone. And sometimes, accepting that and making choices based on it is an act of self-preservation. Chapter 9. Creating your own meaning. If Christmas doesn't work for you as it's currently constructed, then the question becomes, what would work instead? Most people never ask themselves this question. They just accept that Christmas is what it is and try to endure it as best they can. But there's a third option beyond participate fully and avoid entirely. You can participate differently. You can create your own version of Christmas that has meaning and resonance without requiring you to abandon yourself in the process. The first step is permission. Real, concrete permission. Not waiting for someone to give it to you, not hoping that people will understand, just deciding that you're allowed to do this differently. Write it down if that helps. Say it out loud. Make it real in whatever way you need to. The second step is figuring out what actually matters to you about the holiday season. Not what's supposed to matter, not what matters to your family, but what genuinely appeals to you when you imagine it. Do you want quiet? Do you want togetherness? Do you want adventure? Do you want to help people? Do you want to create something? Do you want to rest? Do you want to travel? Do you want to be in nature? Do you want to focus on food or music or art or movement? What actually calls to you? Vanessa realized she hated the shopping and the cooking and the family drama, but she deeply loved the idea of service. Not obligation disguised as service, but genuine contribution. So she and her partner started volunteering at a shelter on Christmas Day. Just 3 hours, nothing elaborate. They helped serve meals and talked to people and went home. It became her new Christmas tradition. She didn't have the weight of obligation on her shoulders because she was there by choice, doing something that aligned with her values. She didn't have to pretend to enjoy things she didn't enjoy. She didn't have to manage family expectations. She just showed up and did something meaningful. For the first time in decades, she actually looked forward to December. Creating your own meaning requires honesty about what brings you peace and what brings you joy. It requires being willing to do something completely different from what you've always done. Which is harder than it sounds because we're all attached to the idea of tradition as something sacred. But traditions aren't sacred just because they're old. Traditions have power only if they actually serve you. If a tradition leaves you empty or resentful or exhausted, then that tradition is failing. And you have every right to replace it with something better. Some people create new traditions that involve other people who also want to do things differently. They build chosen family traditions around food or music or hiking or game nights or volunteering or anything else that brings them together. These traditions often have more meaning than inherited ones because they're chosen consciously, updated each year based on what actually works, and connected to genuine shared values. Some people create solitary traditions. They wake up early and watch the sunrise. They write in a journal about their year. They cook their favorite meal without worrying about anyone else's preferences. They read novels or watch movies or sleep until noon. They spend the day entirely on their own terms. Some people mix both. They have a few quiet hours for themselves, then meet friends for dinner. They volunteer in the morning, then spend the evening at home. They create a hybrid that includes the elements that matter and excludes the elements that don't. The point is that you get to decide. Your Christmas, your values, your meaning. Nobody else gets to determine whether that's enough or right. The only measure that matters is whether it feels true to you. Chapter 10. The Art of Setting Boundaries. Setting boundaries around the holidays is simultaneously the simplest and the most difficult thing you can do. Simple because it's just words. You can say them. I'm not coming this year. I'm not buying gifts. I'm not doing Christmas dinner. I'm doing this instead. These are complete sentences. You're allowed to say them. Difficult because boundaries trigger responses from other people, and those responses are designed to make you regret having set the boundary in the first place. People will be hurt, angry, confused, disappointed. They'll ask why. They'll suggest alternatives. They'll try to negotiate. They'll explain why you're wrong. They'll make you feel like you're breaking something sacred by protecting yourself. The key to maintaining boundaries is understanding that you don't need to defend them, explain them, or justify them. You just need to hold them. James wanted to have a quiet Christmas with just his partner. No family gatherings, no parties, no obligations. Just the two of them, and maybe some close friends. When he told his mother, she immediately launched into a list of reasons why this wouldn't work. The family would be disappointed. His grandmother would be heartbroken. People were counting on him. He was being selfish. James's first instinct was to defend his choice, to explain that he needed rest, that family gatherings exhausted him, that this was important for his mental health. But every explanation he gave his mother just gave her more material to work with. She'd respond to the mental health comment with, "Well, family's good for mental health," or suggest that maybe he was depressed and needed to be around people more. The boundary wasn't working because James kept trying to convince his mother that the boundary was reasonable. The moment he stopped doing that, the boundary actually held. He stopped explaining. He just said, "I'm not coming. I hope you understand. But I understand if you don't." And then he didn't engage with the subsequent arguments. He didn't defend his choice. He just held the boundary. It took several years for his mother to accept it. But eventually she did. Because she realized that James wasn't going to change his mind, that fighting about it wouldn't change his mind either. Boundaries are held through repetition and consistency. You say the same thing calmly, and you don't vary from it. You don't offer exceptions unless you genuinely want to. You don't let guilt or pressure or manipulation change your mind. You hold the line. Some boundaries are clearer than others. "I'm not coming" is straightforward. "I'm coming, but I'm leaving at 8 p.m. is clear. "I'm not buying gifts" is simple. "I'm doing Christmas this way instead" is direct. Other boundaries are more nuanced. Maybe you're coming, but you're not participating in certain activities. Maybe you're buying small gifts but not expensive ones. Maybe you're staying, but you're limiting your time. These boundaries can be harder to maintain because they have moving parts, but they work the same way. You decide what you're willing to do, you communicate that clearly, and you hold the line. One thing to understand is that boundaries often do disappoint people. That's not a sign that your boundary is wrong. That's just the reality of setting boundaries. When you stop showing up for things that benefit other people at your own expense, those people will experience disappointment. That's their experience to have. It's not your responsibility to manage it for them. You might feel guilty about disappointing people. That's okay. You can feel guilty and still maintain the boundary. Guilt is information about what you've been conditioned to believe you owe others. But you don't owe your exhaustion, your peace, or your mental health to anyone else's comfort. The boundary is worth the discomfort it causes, both for you and for other people. Because the alternative is continuing to sacrifice yourself for people-pleasing. And people-pleasing always has a cost. It's just paid over time in the form of burnout, resentment, disconnection, and a profound sense that your own needs don't actually matter. They do matter. Your boundaries are legitimate, and holding them is an act of self-respect. Chapter 11. When December ends, January begins. The holidays will end. December 25th will come and go, and then there will be the days after. January arrives, cold and quiet, and suddenly there's time and space to breathe again. This is when the real work begins. Because the changes you make to how you spend the holidays don't stick unless you're deliberate about what comes next. People will try to pull you back into old patterns. Your own guilt will try to convince you that next year you should return to normal. The culture will start immediately preparing you for next year's Christmas. And by summer, you might start feeling the pressure building again. So in those first days of January, while everything is still quiet and you're still clear about what you learned during December, it's worth asking some questions. What actually worked this year? What didn't? What do you want to keep? What do you want to change? What surprised you? What hurt? What healed? Write these things down. Don't rely on your memory because memory is unreliable and guilt is persuasive. When December rolls around next year and someone is pushing you back into old patterns, you'll want to have a record of what you actually experienced, not what you think you should have experienced. Consider also who you want to bring along with you. Some people in your life will support your changes. Some will resist. Some might even try to sabotage your new boundaries because your freedom threatens the systems they benefit from. You don't have to convince everyone. You just need to find your people, the ones who get it, the ones who support you creating a holiday that works for you. Victoria spent her first post-change January writing letters she never sent. Letters to her mother about all the ways her criticisms had hurt Victoria over the years. Letters to her siblings about feeling left out and unvalued. Letters to herself forgiving the years she'd spent performing for people who didn't actually see her. She wasn't trying to send them or confront anyone with them. She was just processing the shift that had happened, grieving what she'd been willing to accept for so long, and acknowledging what was now different. By the time February arrived, she felt like a different person. Not healed entirely, healing takes time, but fundamentally different. She'd made a choice about how she was going to live, and that choice rippled outward into other areas of her life. She started being more honest with people in other contexts. She started saying no to things that didn't serve her. She started protecting her peace in small ways throughout the year, not just during December. The holiday season is temporary, but what you learn about yourself during that season can be permanent. You learn what you're capable of tolerating. You learn what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're not. You learn where your boundaries are or where they should be. You learn what you actually value versus what you've been conditioned to think you should value. Keep a record of this year. In December of next year, when things start getting chaotic, you'll be grateful to have something concrete that reminds you of what you learned. You'll have evidence that you can do things differently. You'll have proof that different is possible. The moment you finished reading this book was the moment everything changed, not because reading changes anything by itself, but because reading this book means you're ready. You've already decided that something needs to shift. The work now is just following through. Conclusion. Permission already granted. You don't need anyone's permission to have a different Christmas. You never did. But what about this guilt you feel about wanting something different? About protecting your peace? About saying no? That's not a sign that you're doing something wrong. That's a sign that you're finally doing something right. Which feels dangerous because it's unfamiliar. Everything in this book was written because millions of people feel the way you do. They dread December. They feel the weight on their shoulders in November. They show up to Christmas and feel nothing but exhaustion. They watch everyone around them pretending to be happy and wonder if they're the only ones faking it. They're not. You're not. The changes you make this year might be small. You might skip one obligation. You might spend less money. You might leave early. You might stay home entirely. You might create something completely new. Whatever you choose it consciously and hold it firmly. The guilt will come. Someone will be disappointed. Someone will tell you that you're selfish, that you're ruining Christmas, that you're breaking tradition. Let them be disappointed. You've spent enough time already being the person who holds everything together while falling apart inside. This is your year. This is your permission slip. It's already signed. It's been signed since the moment you decided that your well-being matters. Now live it. When December comes, do it differently. When January arrives, write down what changed. When next November comes around, remember that you survived this year. You protected your peace. You chose yourself. And you can do it again, every year, for the rest of your life. That's not selfish. That's freedom, and you deserve it.